Hola, hi. I am very happy to be here to talk to all of you and about how we prepared for the last presidential election night at the New York Times. Let's see. So they already introduced myself, but my name's Albert. I'm a journalist and a technologist. And my job now is to sort of try to bring those two sides together at the New York Times. And the elections was a big project and a big moment for this for us. So elections, the New York Times has covered a lot of elections over the years. On the left is the front page from the 1896 election where William McKinley defeated William Jennings Bryan. I did not work on that one. On the right side, of course, is 2012, where Barack Obama defeated Mitt Romney. We're starting to cover other elections. So this is the French election. There's a German one coming up. I hear there's one in Argentina at the end of next month. We're starting to do more outside the US. But for today, I want to talk about the last big one in the US, of course, with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It was a very, very big moment for us, and we knew it ahead of time. The presidential election is always the most high-profile moment for the media in the US, and we know it's our highest traffic night. All eyes are on us, and so we have to do everything to prepare and be as ready as possible. But a little bit more about the New York Times first. Since this is in Buenos Aires, I should tell you that we publish not just in English, but we have New York Times en Español based in Mexico City. We have Nire Shibao Zhongwen Wang in Beijing. This is a Chinese edition. And over the last year or two, we've published some articles in about a dozen other languages, an increasing number. And we publish on a lot of different platforms, not just on the website, and we have to make sure our results and everything works across all of these. So desktop, web, all the mobile apps, a few I'm forgetting, I'm sure. Paper. And we're a pretty big company, so we have 1,300 journalists worldwide, but we also have over 1,000 technologists, designers, marketers, product managers, and other people who are working on making the New York Times and all our coverage and storytelling as good as possible. And so this talk is a little bit about how both of those two sides of the company, which traditionally have not worked the most closely together, came together to get ready for came together to get ready for the 2016 election. And so we'll go in two parts. And I should tell you that there is a lot of crossover between the two sides. There are a lot of journalists who are also technologists and technologists who are also journalists, but still not enough crossover. And so we have in here two parts. And so part one will be about the journalists who create technology, and part two about the technology. For journalism technology, the goal for all of the coders in the newsroom who are trying to publish election results is to do that, to do it beautifully and accurately and faster than everyone else. And so that's everyone creating our results pages and pulling data and all of that work that Hacks Hackers really is all about. And for that, we create pages that look like this, and this detailed results page for each state and each individual race, over 7,000 of them in 2016. And pages like this with the live forecast updating throughout the night, and our live chat with reporters doing analysis. And so how do we go about creating all of these? And that a little bit is all the technology in this diagram. So this is all the different pieces of software in the workflow that was created by journalists and coders working in the newsroom. So starting with the Associated Press API. In the US, the Associated Press is a consortium of media organizations. That's the definitive source for election results on the night of. They send people to all the different precincts and counties to collect counts from the machines, and they collect it. And so starting from there, we have ELECCS, which is an open source library, which is really the brainchild of my colleague, Jeremy Bowers. And the pieces here that are labeled with the GitHub tags are open source projects. So if you're interested in US elections data and pulling it, then those are great places to start. From there, ELECCS would pull the different results for each precinct and county and load it into a database. And then we have a Node.js app called Election 2016, which is responsible for rendering the design and the layout of all these 7,000 pages and the forecast pages and doing all the visual displays. We have, it's a little bit cut off, but on the left there it says we have in the admin interface for the results infrastructure, we let the editors in the newsroom can look at the results and then they decide, we have a human in the loop to decide when we think each candidate has won each particular state so that they can say, oh, we now believe that Donald Trump has enough votes in Alabama to say that he's won the state. And as the night goes on, they'll make more and more of those calls, and as each call happens, it'll send an alert into a Slack channel that everyone monitors. So everyone in the newsroom working across every platform is aware, and then they can be the first to tweet and update headlines and different stories based on the latest results that have come in. And so then the results app doesn't work like a normal web server. It doesn't serve the pages directly. Instead, we bake out static HTML files to Amazon's S3, and we also publish data files to a service we call Invisible Cities, which uses another third-party service called Pusher to deliver those to the web browser via WebSockets, which means that you can just stay on the page and it'll always live update as you look at it, and you don't have to refresh to get the latest results. And that all of this cycle runs for the 7,000 different results pages and races that people might be interested in about 15 to 30 seconds throughout. And so I also want to talk a little bit more about how our live chat coverage works, which is also another client with a sort of interesting CMS. And so this was coverage that throughout the night we had different reporters chatting and providing live analysis. It's a little bit of a TV second screen experience where you can provide a little bit of commentary and context and explanation of what's happening while you're seeing the results come in. And so we wanted this to be really fast, but we didn't want people to type in a normal content management system because that's a little bit slow of an editing process. And so reporters would instead, they would just chat in a Slack chat room, which everyone knows how to use. It's very easy. You can do it on your phone even if you wanted it to. And then different chats, as you can see, would get selected out, and then others would merely be comments. And then we had a little admin interface for pulling which ones we wanted to publish, and if there are any typos, you could edit it there, and that's the last step before live. And this is sort of the brainchild of some of my colleagues, Tiff Fair, Ben Koski, Michael Strickland. And this was also pushed to the same Invisible City WebSocket server so that it would immediately reload on everyone's page across everyone who's viewing it. And so all of this technology was not built just for election night. We had a lot of practice throughout the entire primary season. We started preparing more than a year in advance. The first primary election where we rolled this out was on February 1st, and that was the Iowa primary. So all of this journalism technology, we're really proud of how it all works and how it all came together and the display of everything. But in 2012, we did something similar, and our site sort of crashed on election night. And we did eventually recover, and someone in the crowd here who I just heard chuckling, Jackie, had a lot to do with bringing us back from the brink. And you can talk to her about that. And so what do we do in 2016 so that doesn't happen? And so between 2012 and 2016, a lot has changed in the New York Times newsroom. Things have always been moving very fast. but it means even more collaboration between the journalism side and the technology and business side of the company. Between 2012 and 2016, we published an article called Snowfall, which is sort of a landmark for digital journalism publication. We had an innovation report that really was kind of a turning point. We launched a new version of the website. We have a new CTO, and through all those projects, everyone learned to work a little bit more closely together. And so that brings us to the tech side of it. This is a little bit of the rest of the technology organization coming to the rescue for those coders, those of us coders in the newsroom who are working on delivering results. This is an actual mission statement from when the project kicked off. And so the big thing that we wanted to do was let's use a CDN, a content delivery network. This was something that our new CTO, Nick Rockwell, made the decision to do. And so we use this one called Fastly, which is a really cool company. They have really great scale, and they really focus on providing services or media companies. I think that BuzzFeed and GitHub and a couple others use. But the problem is all of this started a little late. Usually implementing a CDN is a big project, and we didn't really get cranking on this till, we didn't have a year. We had started August 24th, and so the big question was technology at the New York Times, and I think technology projects in general generally kind of move kind of slow, and so the question was, could the tech side be a little bit more like the journalists and move fast? This is a project that I would have thought would have taken a year or more if it had ever worked. And so can we do this fast enough? And spoiler, I think we did. And these were the real quick. And so this is not my diagram. I don't know this side of the stack as well. So this is something put together by John Oden and Vanessa Wan on our technology group. Before, we only used a content delivery network for our really static assets, and that meant that every time someone visited nytimes.com, they would go directly to one of our 2 data centers on the east and west coast of the US, and there was some fancy piece of networking equipment called a NetScaler, which we always heard about, which would sometimes work and sometimes not work. But as you can see, there are a ton of moving pieces involved in delivering each page in the New York Times. And what we wanted to do instead was to put Fastly behind it so that all traffic would be routed through it and that they could cache most of it and we wouldn't see much of what was going on. So the promise is that everything would be much faster and more stable. It would shave off basically all the election traffic spike. But it did mean that every single request to the NewYorkTimes.com would be different. It would all go through something else, which means there's a ton of surface area for things to break. And a lot of things that would have to be tested. And so it was really, really cool to see the whole technology organization really swing into gear as they got behind this project and aligned with this newsroom objective and see the agile process and how people would go through their status meetings, and we had a ton of people working on closing out a ton of tickets across the entire stack. Like we had to change how registration worked in our paywall, and we had to fix bugs across the store and our breaking news alert system and all these other pieces of software. And so with all that done, we were ready, we thought, to turn it on. By October 4th, all that work was finished. And so with great nervousness, we messaged the company and said, hey, we're going to try out turning on this new CDN. We were pretty sure it'll work, but we'd like everyone across the company to be on alert and to watch out for any differences in how things are working. And things that can happen are like the publishing might not work. People in different parts of the world might see different things or old versions of pages. And so there was a lot of testing that still needed to happen. And so when it came time to flip on the switch, what happened? Well, the site stopped updating. We were no longer able to publish anything new. And so that was pretty bad. And so we had to roll that back pretty quickly, which fortunately we were prepared to do. And go back and say, oh, hey, what's not working? And it turns out the cache and validation logic wasn't quite working. And if people know computer science jokes, that's one of the hard things. And that was one of the promises of Fastly, is actually that their cache invalidation would work really well. That's one of their big selling points, is how fast they are at purging caches. But so we went back and we tried to fix that. And so the next day we were able to do a second test. And what happened then? Oh, hey, it works. It's great. And so after that, it was a continual process of more testing, refining, finding small bugs that were breaking on different parts of the site. The New York Times has been publishing online since 1996, and some pages from 1996 are still around. And so, as you can imagine, when any change happens, there's a lot of old pages that rarely get seen, but that sometimes will break. And so, as we continued to fix those, we went on to a high traffic night when we knew a ton of people were watching, and we would be publishing really frequently to see if it would work in that situation. And that was during the second presidential debate when a ton of people were tuning in, and it worked. And Fastly was actually really fast, which is great. And so we were starting to build a little more confidence at this point through to when we had a fourth test of the software. And by that point, we had gotten our mobile website and apps behind it too, and so we were starting to feel pretty good about things. After that, though, on October 21st, there was this massive cyber attack against our DNS provider, this company called Dyn. And so what happened was, everywhere on this map that's red, people couldn't access the NewYorkTimes.com, and those areas are pretty important to us. It was kind of a big moment. A lot of other sites were also down, including like Twitter and your GitHubs, and this made us really nervous because throughout the election cycle, there had been all these reports about Russian election hacking, and they might be trying to tamper with results. And we thought there really was a credible chance that we might be hacked, or that we might be a target for some of these things. We had already done a lot of security review, but this was really a real reminder to keep doubling down on it. And so this was making everyone, I think, very antsy going into election night. And so it was to keep preparing. And so what do we do to keep preparing when you're nervous? There's tons of different things that might happen. You don't know what's going to happen. And so the solution for those kinds of nerves from the tech side are run books. And so this is something from the DevOps or site reliability engineering methodology, where you go and you take every possible thing that you could think could happen, and you write down step by step by step exactly what you do in each of them, so that when you're panicking, when the site is down and you're troubleshooting, you don't have to think. You just have to read the run book, find the right section of it, and then just type the commands it tells you to. And so we did this, and we had other people from technology and across the company try to sort of war game us and be like, well, what if this happened? What will we do? What will we do in that situation? What if that fails? What if this other thing fails? And assume that anything could possibly break. And so if another attack happened, what would we do? Well, we had another alternate domain set up that we could serve results on if that broke. What if Fastly turns out not to work on election night? There's too much traffic for them. We could fall back to our own data centers, which we had scaled up a lot, and hope that that worked. All of our results serving infrastructure was in Amazon Web Services and US East, and so we set up a parallel version in another region and hoped that would work. What if our office building internet is down and we can't publish? Well, so we got everyone hotel rooms in the area with other internet. What if the data center doesn't work? We had a backup site prepared offsite somewhere else, a very rudimentary one, but one that would be enough to publish results. What if the API doesn't work? Well, they had a backup API, so that's helpful, but what if the backup API doesn't work? Well, so we made plans with them that we would set up a phone line, and they would read the results out to us, and we'd have people copy them down as fast as possible. And if that doesn't work, the AP office is only about 10 blocks from us, so someone can run. And if the whole internet doesn't work, well, we can still print the results out on paper and deliver them to everyone's house, fortunately. So with all that, I think on election day, we were still nervous, but we were feeling ready. And so on election day, As expected, traffic was high. I think we were pretty proud that this is a chart beat screen. Oh, you can't, the numbers are cut off again, but we had over 2 million concurrents, and I think you can see that we broke the chart beat needle. It literally went off the charts. We had, through Fastly, at different points, as many as 100,000 requests per second against our results pages. It was about 8,000 times higher than in things we had seen before. But thankfully, even with all of this, the charts showing how our servers were doing and our cache hit ratio were actually really boring. So there wasn't a whole lot to see there. And so after a while of looking at this, we didn't, those of us working on keeping the site up, we didn't have a whole lot to do. Those of us working on that and in publishing results, it was all working. And so really all we could do is watch these charts instead and watch the drastic swing in win probability percentage from Clinton to Trump as predicted by the live model. And so that's how the night unfolded. This is the homepage throughout election night for us. So thank you very much. Gracias.